Stay tuned for Mystery Train and Bobby Moore Speaks on BMCN. We have a rare treat in store for you this time, a journey into the past, through the East Texas timberlands on a real live steam train. I call this adventure the Mystery Train. Rusk and Palestine, Texas, are two small towns located near the western edge of what is affectionately known as the Great East Texas Piney Woods. There was a day when dense pine and hardwood forest covered much of this section of the state. Sawmilling was the biggest industry of the time, and logs were hauled from the woods to sawmills on small, privately owned, steam-powered railroads. As the times changed and the timber industry declined in importance, the railroads faded into extinction. A few years ago, however, the Texas State Railroad was created by the state of Texas, and eventually regularly scheduled runs were made from Rusk to Palestine, and back, of course, a distance of somewhat less than 40 miles. I had the distinct pleasure of being on the first official run between these two stations several decades ago, but the footage for this program was taken many years later, and as you can see, I enjoyed every minute of it. The occasion was a fundraiser for the Palestine Public Library. I had a small part in a play which involved a railroad trip and a wonderful catered dinner, by the way. This gave me plenty of time to soak in the ambiance and to explore the train from end to end. It was a trip to remember, especially for a steam locomotive lover like
me. I
me.
understood that. Thank you very much. Don't mind if I zoom, do you?
If they could talk, just think of all the stories these old seats could tell. Stories of love and romance, of heartbreak and sorrow, and of life and death. Stories of war and peace, of celebration and despair. The story of the mail-order bride, dressed in her very best, smelling of lavender and nervously awaiting her soon-to-be husband, whom she has never seen. Her heart beats faster. Her breast heaves. It won't be long now. The station is only a few miles ahead. And, waiting by the tracks, the prospective groom nervously pacing, his hair held in place with a little fresh lard, clad in his best, although somewhat faded overalls, and clutching a small bouquet of wild roses in his calloused hand. And in one of these seats, perhaps, an artilleryman, back from the first Great War, his crutches beside him, his leg somewhere in France. And yet in another, a man who once again knows freedom after 20 years in the state pen. What will his life be on the outside? He's headed for the end of the line, as far as his ticket will take him. One way. What then? And here a girl, barely 16, bound to escape to Houston, where she is sure success and happiness await. A salesman for the Kelly turning plow. And way down here, a sleepy gambler with his ever-present bottle in a brown paper sack on the seat beside him. Destination, New Orleans. Somewhere in these 16 coaches is a frustrated conductor who knows that in one of the many seats is a free rider who hasn't paid his fare. And out of sight to us here, in the locomotive cabin at the very front of it all, is the engineer in his blue overalls, his cap, his gloves, and his gauntlets. His hand may be on the throttle, but his mind is on his wife and baby at the end of the line. He knows where we are going, but from our perspective here, we can only see where we've been. This is the Mystery Train.
Power. And that's what it's all about. And it's here. Believe me, it's here. Sir?
What do you want a picture of?
Gauges, firebox.
Inside a firebox?
Yeah, everything exciting inside the cab.
Okay.
I'm going to put it on TV.
Okay.
Got it?
I got it. Alright. On the right hand side here we have the pressure gauges. We're going to drop it down. And that's the brakes and stuff. Right there in front of you. The red handles are more valves. I'm going to stand over to the left side. Right there in front of you, that long column is the water tube. And then we have the fireman's pressure gauge. And then drop it down, you can see the fuel valve and stuff, and more valves. And we're going to open up, take a good look inside the firebox here. Just about 3,000 degrees inside there. That's with it closed. And I think that'd be about it. Get back to the guy.
Also, the power thing depot, over.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the engineer of the Mystery Train. And his name is? Roger Graham. So all the brave engineers aren't gone. Here's one right here. How fast do you go in this thing?
We do 20 to 25, but tonight we may do it slower because they have to time it for
What could you do? What could you do? What could you do if you had a perfectly clear track and it was an emergency and you had to go as fast as you could?
this track probably is about 30, but you have good track, you can go to.
Oh boy. You'd be moving on, wouldn't you?
We got one at the clock number 110.
Incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, steam is not dead. It's coming back. Believe me, it's coming back.
This old railroad right-of-way from Palestine to Rusk, Texas has been in existence for a very long time. My earliest memory of it is in stories told by my mother and grandmother in which they mentioned charcoal producing operations along the track. I can't vouch for the absolute accuracy of these stories since human memory is a fallible thing. As I always say, check it out. That's what I plan to do before we remake the story. It is logical that wood charcoal operations could have been located here, since the area was densely wooded with a climax hardwood forest, and we know that the cast iron dome and columns of the state capitol at Austin were cast in a state prison foundry at Rusk, and I expect wood charcoal was used to fuel the furnaces. When I made my first trip down this track shortly after the opening of the Texas State Railroad, the forest was still dense. The limbs of the tall oak trees extended out over the railroad, and the puffing smoke from the locomotive stack made them dance to the rhythm of the engine as we passed under them. That was well over 2 decades ago, and since then, much of the timber has been cut and much of the land has been cleared. When I look out the window, I see only a shadow of the beauty that once was there. My father and his father were locomotive engineers, and my love for steam engines is great. So is my love for the forest. I grew up in the woods. I began the production of hardwood charcoal when I was 14, and almost all of that was made from scrap wood. We are living in a sad and dangerous world today, my friends, completely alien to the time when this railroad right-of-way was first cleared, with muscle-powered crosscut saws and sharp axes swung by men, when the grading was done by mule teams and mule skinners, and the cold steel spikes were driven by strong men with 9-pound hammers, and when steam engines, such as the one at the head of this train, moved the people and the commerce of the nation and the world. Individuals make wrong turns in their lives, and so do nations, and ours is no exception. The America today is not the same as the America when this railroad was cut through the forest. That old time had its faults and inequities, sure, but God was still in our classrooms, and free enterprise was something to be cherished and admired, not something to be crushed by the heavy hand of government bureaucracy. Is there a lesson to be learned from this old train and what we see outside its windows? It could be this: love freedom, cherish it above all else, but recognize and accept the responsibility which comes with it. Lay your tracks through the wilderness, but treat that wilderness with care, for it is as much a part of our lives as the locomotive. Life has been compared to a railroad many, many times, and that analogy is a good one. The day is done, and darkness falls like a feather from the wings of night, and the mystery train rolls on. We are all of us, are passengers on this dark train, bound for nowhere, destination unknown, but moving, ever moving, down this one-way track of time, together, yet each and every one alone. For BMCN, this is Bobby D. Moore, aboard the Mystery Train.